All right, good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, January 12th, back for this edition of LEAD. Thank you for those of you that are joining us live, and then also welcome to those of you that may be watching the recording. We have Eric and Lisa that are down at the Convention Center at MSBA. We'll do a line change later today where those of us that are in the office will head down there this afternoon to speak to our school boards. This is a reminder, tournament season has begun. This week we have our state debate tournament. Finals will be streamed Saturday night, 5 p.m. on NSPN. I am told that that is a first, so good luck to those 36 schools, I believe, at least have one person competing in debate, and that brings us to the start of our tournament season. Thank you, and a shout out to Park Center, John Hedstrom, and all involved for hosting Together We Make a Difference. Thank you to Charlie and Lisa for all of your work and those that are in attendance. I hope we have a productive session tomorrow and look forward to hearing those student voices. Also, thank you to those who completed your weight class survey. We appreciate that input. We talked about it yesterday at our board workshop, and that data is really important to us. So with that, our liaisons met again earlier this week. We have, I think, a productive agenda for you here today. We'll touch on each of these topics. Again, remember that this is a recording. Those slides are always available for you on your staff. With you and your staff, that being said, we had a pretty visual, very public display of an emergency action plan that came into play a couple Mondays ago on Monday Night Football. Always a great reminder for the work that we've done, and we're going to talk about emergency action plans at this time. And Lisa, are you able to share the information that we have? Lisa?
I certainly am. Thanks, Bob, and good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. Again, just revisiting those winter emergency action plans and taking into account all of the various venues that we use in the winter time, and making sure our staff and site supervisors, coaches are very aware of those plans, practice plans, as well as when we're having an event. Make sure you are reviewing your school district's crisis plan as it probably relates to activities and athletics, specifically if there's an incident at an event. What will be your plans? What will be your conference plans if that event needs to be postponed, and what deems postponement of an event? So really making sure you're in line with your district crisis plan if there is an emergency or a traumatic accident at one of your events. Also, some really good resources on the NFHS website, and we will be sharing those with you throughout the next couple weeks as far as crisis planning and event planning. And so really just making sure we're talking about ahead of time, we're including our administrative team and those in your district that are required to be included on those things. And then really importantly, recognizing and appreciating our athletic training and medical support staff. We that have those and are able to utilize those on a regular basis are really fortunate. And as you work through your processes, really thanking them for being there for your students and your communities. So with that, I will be turning it to Charlie. Oh, Phil, I'm sorry. I'll be turning
Nope, you're all good. I'll hop in there. Thanks a lot, Lisa. Good morning and Happy New Year as we're getting our first lead meeting kicked off here. So Spectator Conduct at contests. Earlier in the week, we were able to hear from our liaisons, and we got some pretty good feedback on some of the things that people were working through, whether it was something as complex as rescheduling contests due to the weather conditions that we've had over the last few weeks, or some of the other things that we got into were some of the things that were happening around managing spectators and best practices there. So the overall feel from the liaisons were that we're starting to roll and get back into normal. There's a positive feel around our contests and our events this winter so far. And while I know that not everything is always all peachy, we've had a really good feel in a lot of our events and contests, and we want to keep that up, but it's going to continue to take work, effort, and energy on our parts as athletic administrators. So hopping in here to some of the best practices, that we talked about with those liaisons that we're going to reiterate here with you and our lead group. The biggest one was having consistency and high expectation within your school district and your conference. Everyone getting on the same page, everyone having a common idea of what the expectations are when it comes to an event, when they're at a specific school, when they're at a conference event, when they're at a school or a district event, is a big deal. And creating that expectation and consistency helps out with managing those spectators. Talked a little bit about spectator boundaries, right? What does this look like? No feet on the floor, having everyone in the bleachers, making spaces more manageable, and having good communication with those spectators, like having a conversation with them pregame, or just introducing yourself to make yourself a little bit more visible to them. Another great idea was checking student IDs, or having a good idea of who is in your building, right? What schools are being represented if it's not just yours and the opposing team's students and fans. So another one real quick was talking about communicating contest management expectations as far as who's handling what in your specific contest, right? If there's a situation with spectator fans, it might be as simple as a quick conversation with the head coach as you're walking into the locker room. If this happens with your student section, who's the best person to communicate with on handling that? Or how do we communicate this if we've got to remove someone? So keeping lines of communication open on that, and then making sure that the expectation is set. This goes for varsity and for lower levels. So I would just say that the feel from that liaison meeting and coming into right now where we're at in January, as we start to turn into postseason play, is positive. I want to encourage you to continue the good work, but know that work we're gonna need to keep our hand on the plow as we move into postseason play and things get more exciting and more emotional. So I appreciate that time. If there's any questions on that, feel free to reach out. Go ahead, Bob, back to you.
Thanks very much, Phil. And I think for both of those topics, this is not information just within your office. We often talk about admin teams. I think with emergency action plans and your plan for spectator conduct, share that with your superintendent. Your admin team should be aware of that. Not bad information for your school board to have as well. We'll be discussing that when we're down there with them. Remember, with your emergency action plans, we talked about the NFL incident. We have had our incidents at the high school level as well. Again, those emergency action plans have been utilized, and we can save lives when we're prepared. Good time to have that conversation with our coaches as well. Charlie, let's talk about what our schools will experience at Together We Make a Difference tomorrow in Park Center. Charlie?
Thanks, Bob, and Happy New Year, everyone. ADs, you are very aware that tomorrow is the state conference. We've communicated that consistently through as many channels as we can. As Bob mentioned, just a shout out to our colleague, John Hedstrom, the AD at Park Center. But also it's important we recognize Osseo Area School Superintendent Corey McIntyre and Park Center Principal Heather Miller-Sink. They have all made a heavy lift in order to host this event, and we appreciate that they have done that. We've also heard from a number of schools that they're unable to attend, whether it's their geography or their school's academic calendar, just unfortunately unable to do so. But we do have more than 50 schools that are registered, planning to attend, more than 500 students. And similar to the regional World Cafes, the conference attendees will be asked to share their voice about their vision for safe, supporting learning environments that are respectful to all and free from racial harm. The information that students share at this conference will be synthesized and shared back to schools through the partner organizations that have supported the initiative from the beginning. You can see those partner organizations here at the graphic at the bottom of the slide. So I encourage you to just see who all is behind this effort. But again, we're excited to get into that state conference tomorrow and provide that experience for our students and student participants. And just one final thank you to the ADs and school staff that in various ways have participated in and supported this process from the very beginning. Back to you, Bob.
Good, thanks, Charlie, and best of luck. Thanks for those in attendance, and also understand those that are unable to due to distance and or road conditions and weather. May 9th will be here before we know it. I know it doesn't feel like it at this time, but that is the date for our rep assembly. Eric, let's talk about Rep Assembly and what we will be seeing on that date. Eric?
Thanks, Bob. Good morning, everyone. And Representative Assembly, as many of you know, is the fashion in which bylaws are adjusted or changed within the Minnesota State High School League. And so we've got 3 items that are for consideration at this time. 2 of those are right now working their way through our region committees. Those top 2, requirement of eligible officials at cross-country meets and a set of specific bylaws for our adapted athletics that best fits their needs, schedule, etc., are both going in front of our region committees right now. You see the headline that says that the region's vote determines the advancement. So we need 9 out of 16 regions to support those bylaw changes for them to be voted on by the Rep Assembly. If they don't reach 9 regions, they will then no longer advance. The third item, which we're all very familiar with, is boys volleyball. In our December board meeting, the board of directors approved a new model for the adding of interscholastic programs by creating an emerging status with set timelines and set benchmarks for how an activity can work its way into the Minnesota State High School League. That includes support from member schools and considerable participation over the course of time to be able to demonstrate that that's what's going to happen. You see in the parentheses below that says that the board also approved boys volleyball for emerging status for the coming year. While in emerging status, boys volleyball will stay in its same season. Should boys volleyball this spring be approved for interscholastic status for 24-25, State High School League will engage in a study to determine the best placement from a season perspective following that vote. So again, that is going directly to the Rep Assembly by approval by the board of directors. And right now, boys volleyball is slated for emerging status for the coming year, but still needs support from Rep Assembly in order to become a fully interscholastic program. So a little bit complex, but that's how the rules are made here at the Minnesota State High School League. Bob, any cleanup there?
No, just correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. Emerging activities is new. It's a new opportunity, new language that is used. The board has always had the ability to advance a topic to Rep Assembly. That is not new. That is not an exception. That is something that has been within our bylaws as I know it. With that being said, without any corrections, Eric, I'm going to move forward into competitive section placement. It is that time of the year. It is that time of the 2-year cycle. We are heading into year 3 of a 6-year cycle. The questions are starting to pick up. Remember that timeline, continue to utilize that. Next, I would say benchmark date is January 27th. If you are a school that opts up in certain sports and or activities, note that that is the date to do so. That form is located on the website. It will also come out with more details in our Thursday update today. Also note or bookmark that competitive section page on your website as we get into that cycle. We're still waiting for our enrollments from the Department of Education, but that is our kickoff. Once we receive that, the process will begin. Encourage those that have questions around competitive section placement to attend our learning session on January 17th. That is a Zoom opportunity that will be far more interactive than our lead meetings, questions and answers. We are getting questions that are coming in. We are recording those. There is also an invitation coming out to you in this week's update today to submit questions so we can best prepare you to answer those questions all at once. If you have others that are interested in this, feel free to have them participate in that learning session, but that is intended for you to have the best information you can have to answer when your constituents ask questions around where they will compete in the postseason. If there are no further questions there, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie to continue to talk about continued opportunities in professional development. Charlie?
Great, thanks, Bob. This slide highlights upcoming opportunities available to ADs. First, you'll see a new AD midwinter workshop. This is designed for not necessarily first-year ADs, but ADs that are in their first 3 years of service. This workshop will focus primarily on management strategies. And you can see that's January 18th, beginning at 1:30, will be offered virtually, no need to travel. The second bullet point highlights an opportunity to complete the AD education requirement. This requirement requires ADs to complete a condensed version of the Minnesota head coaches course within their first 3 years as an AD. Our crafty veterans who have been serving as an AD since 2019 or prior must have this requirement completed by the end of July. There will be 2 more opportunities to complete this requirement this year, once at the M&I AAA conference at the end of March, and again virtually in April. And finally, I'm pleased to announce that the Inside Out group was able to secure additional NFL Foundation funding to further enhance their presence in Minnesota after being disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. You can see the target audiences for each cohort. And note that registration for all of these professional development opportunities that exist on this slide can be located behind the AD Education button in your dashboard. And you can see the graphic there. You find education, click AD Education, and you'll see a complete summary for each of these and an opportunity to register. Bob, back to you.
Good, thank you very much. As we were working through preparing for today's presentation, as well as with our liaisons, we felt there's a necessity for Laura. Update us again on website tips that will assist our ADs. Laura?
Great, and good morning, everyone. Bob will be sharing a few bylaw and policy tips coming up, and we talked about emerging activities previously, and people have been saying, where can I find that? On the website, there is a page that's called MSHSL Handbook, Bylaws and Policies. And if you look on the right side of this graphic, there are 4 sections on this page, and it has started to grow to be the kind of the spot for all governance documents. The first section has been on that page traditionally on the website, and that is the official handbook. So you'll find an electronic copy of the official handbook on this page. The second part that's been added and continues to grow are board policies that are not necessarily in the handbook. And under graphic number 2 on there, the first one that's actually there right now in alphabetical order is that new policy around the adoption of interscholastic activities, also known as emerging activities. The third section compiles all of the various sport and activity rules and policies. Those are found in other places under specific sports, and you can find them there also. But on this page, you can find links to all of those sport-specific rules and policies. And the fourth part, we received feedback from more recently that people were struggling and would like to find in one place are all of the Minnesota modifications. And those are rule modifications to NFHS and other governing board documents. 2 ways to get to this page. Number 1 is on the left side of this graphic. From your dashboard, you have a button that says MSHSL Handbook. That will lead you to the page that is the handbook page with these 4 sections. The other way to find this, if you're not logged in and looking at your dashboard, is underneath the About at the top of the website. There is a handbook link there. And again, we traditionally have called this the handbook page. It's really growing into more of a governance documents page with a number of things that are compiled in one place for you. I'm seeing a lot of eyes as people are trying to find these spots. This page continues to grow, and please continue to give us feedback on what works and what else you might want to see here and what might be missing from here. I'm going to turn it back to Bob now to talk about a few of those policies and bylaws with some things around that.
Thank you, Laura. Great segue where to find information we'll review on the next 2 slides here. Popular questions around uniforms. Remember that no matter who pays for the uniforms, whether it's booster clubs, parents, and or the student athletes, they're your uniforms, right? It is your opportunity to make sure that they understand what the expectations are, whether it's the NFHS or our own modifications. Popular questions have been around special recognition and commemorative patches. Please remember there is a link with that policy on there, as Laura just discussed, that gives you great detail as to what you can and cannot do around our uniforms. If you call and ask whether or not we can have camouflage hockey uniforms, the answer is going to be no. It is not an option located within that document, nor is it an option within the NFHS rules book. Again, this is education-based athletics. Let's make sure our uniforms reflect that. And if we ever want to review that policy, we're able to do so under special recognition. We need schools to let us know that. This was put in place to make sure that you're utilizing funds as you see fit and resources. You can decide whether or not you want 3 or 4 uniforms per a sport, but again, they all need to follow NFHS rules or Minnesota modifications. We're going to move on to quick takes again, which is going to cover some of our bylaws and policies, specifically around questions that we're getting. It is that time of the year, if you're on semesters where you're wondering whether or not a student is making progress towards graduation. Utilize bylaw 103 if you need support in that and working with students and or parents. Just a reminder on coaches certifications and requirements. We'll talk more about volunteer coaches where there really isn't a volunteer coach. That is how they get paid. But all coaches need to meet those certifications and or requirements. As you're planning for maybe spring trips, again, use bylaw 411 on page 83. Do not leave the state without turning in that form, making sure your board approves it. Remember, if your state is not touching our state that you're traveling to, you cannot compete and or scrimmage according to bylaw. There is also a mile limit within there. Make sure you notice that, share that with your coaches, and get permission before your teams travel out of state. Also on for those that are competing during the season in opportunities on those national team or Olympic development teams, make sure that you're filling those out. Get those in. We ask 30 days in advance. We'll work with you if you do get those surprises, but your teams and your coaches, your student athletes should work with you well ahead of that, as it does take some time to process. That is it for quick takes at this time. I'm going to turn it over to Phil for our checklist. Phil?
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. So checklist items here, just a few things. Most of these are reminders that have already been talked about earlier in our lead presentation here, but review and update emergency action plans. Lisa hit on that earlier. Communicate that, make sure everyone's on the same page. Attend competitive section learning session that's on January 17th. If you've got questions centered around the competitive section placement aspects of that process, that time and place is where to be, January 17th at 2 p.m. Register for the new AD workshop on January 18th. Registration is open all the way up until that time of 1:30 on January 18th. So if you're not registered, go ahead and do it, but know that you've got up until then, if something moves around or changes in your schedule, to be able to make that work. Registration for the AD requirement that is on January 25th. That does require an advanced registration. Make sure that you get that in as soon as possible. And then last, for a form and with a date and a deadline here, competitive section opt-up forms are due by January 27th. Last couple here that we've got on our checklist of action, call them action items. As we move into postseason play, right, we want to make sure that we're verifying our official rosters for our winter sports and activities prior to postseason. Take care of that now so that it's not a rush when we're getting into section play. Verify winter coaches have met all of your education requirements. Again, going back to those coaches' dashboards, that's something that you, an assistant, someone in your athletic office can be working on right now to make sure that you're ahead of the game when we start to slide into postseason play here. Registering your spring coaches for the head coaches courses that are coming up. I believe there are 2 or 3 different options for taking that head coaching course that are going to be on the site. Make sure that you're in their ear about getting that completed well in advance of your spring start dates. And then lastly, submitting your spring supply orders. Those are on the site. I know those have been talked about as far as where to go on the dashboard to get those. If there are any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But the sooner we get those spring supply orders in, the sooner we can get those fulfilled and get the information in you and your coach's hands for that season. Bob?
Very good. Well done, Phil. This will conclude our lead meeting. We know that January can be a very long month with competitions, and what can go wrong in a season often does. This does not diminish your workload. Hopefully today's information will assist you. Refer it on to others if they aren't able to join us here today. If you have topics we haven't covered yet, work with a liaison near you And we will see you on Thursday, February 9th. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.